Okay, hi Cancer. Welcome to Catalyst Energies and welcome to your weekly astrology report. We are looking at the second lunar quarter that starts on the 9th of January, and we have a Cancer full moon. Your full moon is happening this month, Cancer, and it's going to be at 28 degrees Cancer. It's on the 17th of January. So this report is for Cancer rising, Cancer moon, Cancer sun, and we're going to look at the main themes, the main transits leading up to your full moon on the 17th. And if you haven't checked out the general astrology report for this week, you can do that by clicking on the link at the end of this video, or you certainly can scroll down on BitChute and find the astrology report, the general astrology report. And that talks about all of the transits a little bit more in detail. This is really looking at the areas of life that these transits are going to affect. So for Cancer, we are looking like right at personality, who you are, and who you are in relationships. So quite simply, I think that Cancer people have been building to this for a long time, of course, that there's going to be, with this full moon, a very cathartic moment for all of us of releasing that which is ready to be fully released. And the power that we can harness from this event is substantial, but the power dynamics and the butting of heads, so to speak, between our egos and the power of death and transformation is also going to be very extreme. And the conjunction with the natal Pluto of the U.S. chart. So we're also going to have a cathartic moment that's going to be for a lot of us, that for Cancers is really about who you are in your relationships, because you're the boss in your relationships. You have the 7th house in Capricorn, because you as a person are the protective mechanism, your love, right? Your personality is in fact the protective mechanism in your relationships. So that also means it brings out in you the provider and the boss and the leadership qualities, which has been overhauling for many years with Pluto in this area. But now that the sun's here, Venus in retrograde is here, this full moon, the new moon started in your 7th house. So relationships, interpersonal dynamics and one-on-one relationships, ritual, binding agreements, they're all, for Cancer people, some measure of this goes through an incredible catharsis that is going to show you at your full moon, is your very identity capable of holding itself, consolidating itself into the core of who you are in the face of what will be a major relationship destruction or catharsis. Now, some people are probably so ready for this to happen that they're ready, and it's going to show them exactly what they are hoping to see, or just give them the insight that they've been waiting for, okay? But it still will be very much along identity lines for the Cancer person. Now, the moon on the 9th, the first quarter moon, which is always a crisis. The moon is what is ruling your chart, right? It is running point on your chart because you are a Cancer. And so the moon itself in a square to the sun in your 7th house, that's the same area where this catharsis at your full moon is going to be at least actualized in your 7th house. How you're feeling and as the sensitivity to the nature of the social and political order, which is something that is exemplified in you in your relationships, right? This is the square here between the 7th and 10th house, because who you are in relationships does have a direct impact, but is not the same and has different trajectories as who you are in society. Right? Your professional or public life is your 10th house, and it's often expressed through a career or a mission. But the 7th house is who you are in your one-on-one, right? So you can see how they have different trajectories just in general. And so how you're feeling about yourself in your professional life, especially with Chiron here, and the moon just touching it, I think there's just a lot of irritability. There's a lot of strong feelings. There's a lot of connection into the shadow of the professional and public life for the Cancer person, and how the Cancer person really does feel about what they're doing in this realm, or certainly what they're participating and contributing to, or just the nature of it, right? Just the nature of these social institutions that the Cancer person is part of. They're feeling very, very deeply, more so than others probably, at a, the mission level, like what this really is doing at an institutional level. So, but how one feels in terms of their and feeling into the political and social and public sphere is definitely different than the individual that is or the individual person finding themselves in their one-on-one relationships, because there's a spark here that is igniting for all of us, and it's in your mission. And that's where I think the tension in terms of still fulfilling who you are in your relationships when something new wants to come forward in terms of this area, but the wounding of the self and the superimposed identities of shame and guilt that we're all dealing with, coming into this area of the social and political expression that you are feeling into, you don't want to. The Cancer person is in a position to really model and to be a leader and kind of a teacher in the process of this particular lunar cycle, especially. And there's Mercury's going to go retrograde, and it's in your 8th house. You have Saturn in your 8th house. And so it can be a little bit dense, but at the same time, it's Aquarius. And now you have Mercury here. So this realm of going into the abyss and going into the shadowy subconscious spaces and being able to feel into them, the Cancer person naturally is able to do so in this detached Aquarian way. Like you just kind of surround the situation and you're not in it. So in some ways, this is allowing for the awareness of the Cancer person's feelings about the social and political order, and especially how it triggers them into shame and guilt for being part of it. And we're all going through it in a different way, but for the Cancer person, it's like when you come out as a leader in your relationships and in the ritual binding agreements that you're part of, you're also responsible for what's created. And I think that's where the biggest triggers and trauma are coming up for the Cancer person, is in the social and political order that we're all in. And so now it's just that much more like, I want to engage with the spark of what made me want to be compassionate and take care of others and be a loving person in the first place. But I think it's just these relationships and these binding contracts, maybe they're karmic, right? Whatever they are, they need to be released. And I think the Cancer person, I can really feel that it's like, please, I just want to be released from these burdens. And I think that this full moon is going to be so it's going to be such a strong return to self for the Cancer person. Now, the belief systems with Neptune in the 9th house and Jupiter now coming in, this is where I feel like the Cancer person now is able to manage these abstractions and this realm of ideas of understanding and big picture ideas, when it had been very mystical and still very mystical, and Neptune is very much connected to the sun in a sextile during this week. And so there is something very beautiful and mystical and humanitarian about the collective paradigm that Cancers are operating under, and wanting to engage with that, with the meaning of things from that level. And now that Jupiter's here, there's going to be a little bit more like, hey, I can manage this space. It's not just this like watery, nebulous, like no boundary, like, oh, everything is connected and we are just so beautifully connected together, and that's how I understand it, but you're not really living it, right? That's much more the 12th house is the full experience of it, for good or bad. But now that Jupiter's here, who loves to be in the 9th house and is co-ruler of Pisces, Cancer people are about to about to drop some wisdom here. There's a possibility here, and even though the feels around one's shame and guilt about being part of the political system that we're all part of right now, there's a release with Mars in terms of the individual daily life. What can you do that's right in front of you, and what can you use Mars for in order to have an impact on something that's right in front of you, when maybe you can't quite have an impact right this moment on what's socially and politically happening as a whole, right? You can just feel into how terrible it is, but what do? Well, Mars is like, hey, I got the perfect outlet here. Let's work on developing and acting on the meaning in our personal daily life as a routine, as a practice, as a meditation, as some sort of daily ritual that's going to make us into much more of a purified and service-oriented person. So that's one way that we can release the Cancer person can release what otherwise is just like angry feels, just like hot anger and deep feelings of anger about the social and political structure, okay? But here's the thing, as we move towards your full moon, we also are going to find that just as quickly as Mars is like, hey, let's draw in everything that we have come to learn about, what we can actually do right in front of us in our own lives that actually has meaning, and that we can gather from, a sense of optimism and a sense of honesty and all those Sagittarian, like big picture, like bring it into my daily life. As soon as that happens, though, the Mars then just squares Neptune, right? And it's like, okay, I know what I need to do now, and I'm going to start acting in accordance with that. And Neptune's just like, that's great. But the belief systems, which are very much, the Sagittarian house, is just like, hey, it really does, you can do your rituals and your ceremonies, and you can do all your practices. Oh, Cancer, this is going to be interesting. You can do all of those things. You can have that daily meditation. You can do all of those things. But at the end of the day, Neptune is just like, it's really just having a full understanding of the entire experience of spiritual transcendence. And that may not look like what you are doing in a material daily routine way. And Mars is that last push there. So having Mars in the sixth house is a great way to harness some real willpower to change yourself and to purify yourself. It's just the belief systems that are so nebulous have the potential to just like douse your fire. So don't let it entirely, but also realize that if it does happen, there's something about the experience of oneness that is really important to an overall understanding. And Jupiter gets that. So also realize that Jupiter is able to manage a space that ultimately was just space, right? It was just metaphysical understandings without any context necessarily, unless there was anything else in Pisces. So, and that's where the sun in your seventh house does come in. It's a sextile to Neptune. So at the very least, there is a sense that this transcendental, maybe humanitarian set of beliefs, a metaphysical reality that is so broad and dreamy and transcendental, can really be used to activate your voice in your relationships as an individual who is wanting to be part of this dynamic interchange. He sees that everybody wins here, and it's really about us all working together, or you working in a very fluid, dynamic way in your relationships. That's going to come from having a much more belief-oriented system, a system that is more oriented towards a metaphysical belief system or a more transcendental value system. You'll want to really find yourself in your relationships through that. That's a great sextile for Cancer, because again, you have this potential here with Jupiter to really drop some knowledge here, and to really be able to manage what otherwise was just a very formless but very vast and beautiful, compassionate set of belief systems that have been growing and expanding. Now the expansion is coming with some agent of action, Cancer. And what you'll find here is that even though Mars is maybe going to be doused by that, it's going to be the sun, and fundamentally a relationship with other that'll really be fulfilled, and activated by your broad metaphysical, beautiful, transcendent belief systems. So when we get to, at this point, Mercury is still direct, you have Black Moon Lilith in your 12th house. And as the North Node is about to move into your 11th house, as we do this report, there are primal aspects of the Cancer person within their ancestral karma, within their own field, right? Within their multidimensional experiences or past lives, perhaps. Just maybe the connection to the Earth ancestry in general that really wants to come forward and demands to be heard, and will be, whether we allow it consciously or not. That's the thing about Lilith. It's so primal and powerful that she will surface regardless if we, provide the channels consciously. And so, because we tend to want to suppress these parts of ourselves because they're more animalistic, they are deep, they're very instinctual, but they're also the connection to the original wisdom of belonging to the earth and being from here. So there's something very stabilizing about Saturn here in the 8th house that I think is going to allow this this expression or this experience to come forward for the Cancer person. And once that happens, Mercury stations retrograde in the 8th house, and you really start to process, deeply go into an introspective processing period about what came forward out of this totally unconscious state that may be something deeper than you ever realized. I think that Mercury retrograde for the Cancer person is actually going to be a great time to process information that is relative to the shadow, right? Because that's really where the Cancer person, they're being triggered in the realm of the social and political order. And so getting into the shadow without being submerged in the shadow, as a Cancer person, you are like this shamanic, investigator. It's really very powerful. And this is why this full moon is going to be so important about, are you at the very fundamental level, Cancer, able to withstand destruction of who you are as a result of destruction of relationships? Because we still need you to be able to go into the shadow realm, and hold yourself in that realm, because what's in there is, Mercury is going to take the opportunity in its retrograde, like I said, for all of us to go into review. And it's about review of what is being produced in these relationships. And this is, I think, what you're going to be able to speak on clearly now that Jupiter is coming into the 9th house and represents that kind of that teacher or that professor, or certainly that representative of the collective value system. I think that Cancers are an incredible position actually to step forward with this knowledge. It's just, you're going to have to go through this catharsis moment first, I think, with the full moon. And then from there, there'll be much more focus on rebuilding yourself in your relationships, coming to terms with what actually is valuable and starting to activate it, especially when Mars comes into a conjunction with Venus in your 7th house. I think that this is a catharsis in a destructive way, and then the fertile space is made, and then Mars and Venus come together and fertilize it. So something very very liberating for the Cancer person in terms of who they are in their relationships. I mean, I feel like that there is such a heavy burden for Cancers in terms of who they are in their relationships that it's going to be such an amazing release to finally be rid of that. And that'll, I think, release a lot of this karmic residue in terms of how kind of gross it feels, to be part of a political or social system that you're like, oh God, like, how did we get here, right? And you can feel into how we got here, but you also want to reestablish your own binding agreements that do eventually create our social order. We all have it. And the Cancer person, it's going to be through that experience, just being in the experience of the self and going through these massive changes in your relationships, your one-on-one relationships, is going to be a lot of what you ultimately are able to share and to teach about Cancer. It's through that process. So I'm going to leave it there. I think that is it's going to be a powerful, very powerful full moon for Cancer people. And it's good because this is going to show where there may be some leakage in your personality and the structural integrity of your identity in the face of relationships having massive changes. Because if you are able to and welcome that destructive force and your identity is not actually impacted, there may be some ripples in the water, but you are not actually going to be drained or destroyed because that shell of who you are is so structurally sound, because that way you are able to then share that with others and be like, yo, let me show you how I figured out how to be a boss and a leader without, strictly identifying myself by what was falling away. So Cancer, important role for you to play. I'm excited for you, actually. This feels like a defining moment for Cancer people, especially during this whole lunar cycle, but definitely this full moon at this pivotal time in our history. So Cancers, if you are interested in a reading or energy work to support your process, or just to learn more how to support this work, you can stick around to the end of the video and get some more information. And you certainly can follow the links in the description box below. So I'll see you on the next astrology forecast, which is going to be on the Cancer, or gosh, see, I'm totally distracted. It's going to be on the Aquarius new moon in February, so I'll see you on that next video. And in the meantime, have a great week. Enjoy your full moon, Cancers, and we will be in touch soon. Take care.